Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, going to go over an article titled Young Women on Dating and Feminism in America. The Weirdness of Dating as a Young Feminist Woman in America. And guys, this article is written by a woman, and she's going to go into this whole thing about all these young women that she interviewed, young feminists, and pretty much how it's not exactly a very fun thing dating in today's world. And what's funny about this is the first thing that hit me about this was, guess what? Who do you think are the ones making it so complicated? Who are the ones making it so, as they say, weird, right? And, you know, I gotta tell you, after reading this, because obviously I read these things before I cover the article, I gotta tell you, it is no surprise that so many young guys nowadays are just completely walking away and just have no interest in dating, in relationships, and all that, at all. I mean, the numbers are just rising and rising every day. I know this because I do stories about it, articles and all that. I know young guys. This is a perfect example. And I'm just so glad that I'm in my 40s now as opposed to actually being young teens and 20s in this era, because things are definitely warped. But anyhow, guys, I'm going to go into this article here. You're going to get a good laugh and just see the mindset of how things are today. And like I said before, it's no wonder things are the way they are, and that, guess what, these gals find it weird and difficult because ultimately you are the ones making it so difficult. Now, I will say this to be fair. There are a couple points the one girl writing the article makes, and I'll point that out because, you know, I try to be fair here. But overall, you're going to see a lot of buzzwords, by the way, in this particular article. You can make a drinking game out of some of these buzzwords, and you'll figure it out real quick what those buzzwords are. So it starts off, dating is super weird. Amelia, a 25-year-old Bernard College graduate who's partial to the phrase, wait for it, men are trash. I loathe it, but I don't know if I hate it because I'm looking for a specific type of person who's not that common. She said person, she didn't say man. Because I want a feminist man, or if everyone hates it and we're all fighting an uphill battle. So we got a young feminist girl. I got to start saying feminist now because if I say the other word too much, YouTube won't like it too much and flag me. She's looking for an feminist guy. And guess what? I've done articles where actually these feminist women end up with feminist guys, and those guys turn them off. How interesting. Dating has always been and will forever be weird. But dating in life as a young woman in America is particularly fraught. A study in extremes. On the plus side, in this era post-third world or maybe fourth world feminism, the concepts are largely mainstream. Groundbreaking work is being done with intersectionality. There's M2 and grape culture awareness, more code. Consent is taught at many colleges. There are more women in government than ever. At the same time, a man who's bragged about groping holds the top office in our country. She's obviously referring to our former president. This was obviously written a little bit ago. The gender pay gap persists. No, it doesn't. And abortion rights continue to be chipped away in various states. The internet has allowed information and PORN to spread on an unprecedented scale without necessarily promoting nuance or kindness or even accuracy. Early stage courtship rituals can be conducted without ever meeting in person, thanks to apps like Snapchat, Tinder, and Hinge. Because everybody pretty much has a cell phone, you never have to call and awkwardly get your crush's mom on the phone. You can also FaceTime, bringing your digital relationship all the more up and close and personal. But eventually you got to meet in person, and that brings a whole new array of weirdness. Funny how she talks about meeting in person is a weird thing. Like, she is so used to all the technology, the way to communicate and meet with somebody. And for any of you guys that are above the age of about 35, guess what? Back in our day, you actually had to meet with people. If you wanted to, you went out to meet a woman, if that's what you did, you're in a dating, pickup relationships, that's how you met them. You didn't do it digitally, but nowadays, this generation, that's all they do. And I've noticed what's interesting is the younger the generations are, the younger kids, they just don't have the social skills that people did in a different time period. It's no surprise, you know. All the time they're on their electronic devices instead of actually talking and learning social skills. How does this all trickle down to young women? And what does it mean for their dating lives? I spoke to 9 women aged 19 to 25 to find out. Yeah, because women, or anybody for that matter, 19 to 25 are so experienced in life. While feminism and ways to talk about it are more accessible than ever, love and romance remains opaque and often confusing. It's easy to take a feminist stance in politics and public issues, notes feminist author and Medium columnist Jessica Valenti, but making that work in private life feels much harder. I'm hearing from young women that it's not so hard to find a boyfriend who says he's a feminist, but that's not the same thing as finding someone who lives it. Translations, guys will say whatever they got to say to get in their pants, but they obviously want a guy who actually eats, sleeps, and breathes feminism. And unfortunately, given the environment we're in, thanks to TV and movies and media and the public school system trying to hammer this into guys, you're actually going to get more and more guys actually that are embracing these ideas, and no surprise there. It says, so, are they feminists? There was no question among the young, college-educated women I talked to that being a feminist was part of their lives, something they agree with intellectually as well as emotionally. I think the woman that wrote this article picked and chose very carefully who she got to interview for this article to show that everybody's like this. Because believe me, not all women, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, teens, buy into a lot of the extremes of what we have today. A lot of women will say, yeah, I'm a feminist. There, I said it. Not really getting the extent of what it is nowadays. They just think it's about equality and equal rights. What it really has been for a while is trying to make the genders equal, and you've seen how that's worked out, and pretty much bashing men, making us out to be second-class citizens. And that's really what's been going on. So I do my part here to bring awareness and call BS where it is. Anyhow. Michelle, a 21-year-old who goes to Vanderbilt University, put it clearly, I believe that women have historically been barred from the same privileges and opportunities that men have had. And I think that needs to change. Those inequalities are felt throughout daily life, she explains. Magazines screaming at you to be thinner, more beautiful, and better at you-know-what to please your man. Advertisements on the television telling you have to use more products to cover up who you really are. Men catcalling you on the street. Assumptions about your preferences for so many things like food, lifestyle, and romantic partners because, wait for it, you're a girl. Look, nobody forces you to be thinner, put makeup on, dress nice, have long hair, take care of your hair, take care of your nails and all that. No one's forcing you to do it. But if you want to attract a man, guess what? Or honestly, a woman, you got to take care of yourselves. End of story. If you want to let yourself go, but don't complain that you can't get any guys to be attracted to you because you look like crap. And you don't need to be covered in makeup like a freaking clown. You don't need to be having designer clothes on and stuff like that, and the highest of high heels and all those things, but you got to take care of yourself. Back in my high school, I raged against the wait for it, patriarchy. Raged. What does that say about this person she's interviewing about raged? But what's happening now is more organized, more organic, and dare I say, smarter. Jennifer Matthew, I guess that's how you pronounce the name, author of the young adult novel Moxie, in which a teenager kicks off a feminist revolution at her high school. A high schooler kicks off a feminist revolution. Anytime you throw revolution in anything, it's not exactly a very, middle of the road, easygoing thing. It's a big deal. That speaks volumes about these types. She's a sponsor of the feminist club at the large, diverse public high school in Houston, Texas, where she teaches what she teaches and says, what I see among young feminists is a far deeper understanding than I had of how systems are working and how race and S-word orientation and how ability levels intersect, she tells me. I didn't start to have those awarenesses until I was an adult, and these women are having it now. Translation, yeah, the younger girls in high school are having the awareness that maybe she had when she was older, after college and all that, because they're hammering it into these kids at a young age. Zoe, a 19-year-old student at Brooklyn College, never had to have the conversation with myself that I was a feminist, but I didn't really know what it meant until the Beyonce song Flawless. That let me put a name to it. That didn't mean everyone felt the same way. In 11th grade, some kids started wearing Meninist shirts, and Zoe was called an F-Nazi. There was definitely a gender component onto this, and even now, among young men, there's a stigma against the word. Well, no kidding, because the young men are realizing that it's not what a lot of these gals think it is. They're talking about equal pay and being treated equal and all that type of stuff, but it's beyond that, and we all know it. So that's what these young guys are, what she's talking about here. Zoe has found that a lot of guys aren't ready to call themselves feminists, even if they believe in it. Michelle adds, I've had many conversations where a guy will describe his own beliefs about women, consent, and equal rights, and they fall right in line with being an feminist. Then when I ask them if they would consider themselves a feminist, they balk, saying things like feminists are just too radical of a word. It reminds me of bra burners and Nazis. Yeah, because they know darn well there's what they think is, equal and should be fair. Okay. But then they know exactly what it really is nowadays. But a lot of these gals, they've had so much of the pink Kool-Aid, if you will, or actually they've been doing keg stands with the pink Kool-Aid, that they just don't want to accept that. Say the guys who identify as such, how do you know if they truly believe it or they're just saying it to get you in bed? Identifying as a male feminist has sexual currency, says Valenti. The women I talk to, however, don't tend to demand feminism bona fides before going on dates or hanging out with someone. But they do talk to their partners about feminism once in a relationship. Of course, they're going to talk about their boyfriends and their partners, whatever they want to call it, because they eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. Around the time of the Brock Turner case, Zoe showed her then boyfriend an article about the little things women endure every day. I could tell it changed his mind, and he asked about reading my feminist books, she says. I definitely think women in romantic relationships are in a special position to have those conversations, says 20-year-old Maddie, a student at Bernard College. It's not a responsibility, but a big opportunity. Under the category of the aggressions and microaggressions, I heard some horror stories, namely about gaslighting, manipulation, and shaming. These things tend to happen more when the women I talk to were young, teens in middle school or high school just starting to date and figure themselves out. Nora, for instance, broke up with her boyfriend the summer before 9th grade. Once they were back at school, he started bugging her. He would follow me down the hall screaming, she says. He'd call me a SLUT for flirting with other guys. He'd make me want him again, and then he'd be like, no. This went on for about a year. Well, that's not cool, the guy harassing her and screaming SLUT down the hall. That's not cool. I'm fair with that. But the guy could be upset if they broke up, but the action there, that's not cool. But that's just a guy being a jerk, not what they want to label as, all those other terms that are popular with those gals. Her last relationship, which lasted 3 years, was eye-opening. Someone you're with shouldn't make you feel bad. It seems so simple, but it's not, she explains. I kind of still let people walk all over me a bit. Zoe's pre-college dating life was fodder for rumors and shaming. In 8th grade, there was a rumor that I threw up giving my first BJ, she says, and it wasn't true. There were also anonymous Instagram accounts spreading crap about people. She learned some valuable lessons. I sent Snapchats in 9th grade and got saved and circulated around. She doesn't blame herself exactly. Well, no, women and accountability. She says, the guy should have known that wasn't something that's okay. But what I did, that wasn't feminist. Still, though, some of her friends send pics and she doesn't anymore. So in other words, when she was younger, she was sending around pictures of herself, which unfortunately a lot of young people do. A lot of young girls do, and they don't realize the consequences of this because they're so in this era of Instagram and other things to get attention. They just take pictures of themselves and not realizing that's going to get circulated around and all that. And while certainly it's not cool for people to do that and take advantage of it, still, you make your bed and you lie it, even if you're a teenager, okay? And she learned the hard way. What happens, you take pictures of yourself, put them up online, and people are going to spread it around. Even more common is jokey behavior coached in sexism. The kind of thing that's annoying, but to most women I spoke to, not worth getting angry about. Lana, a 20-year-old who goes to Hampshire College, says of her boyfriend a little over a year ago, we're both musicians, and he'll say, wait for it, you play like a girl, and laugh. Oh, God forbid. He's joking around. He's playing around. Even if he wasn't, who cares? This is the crap that these feminists get so worked up about, and it's not that big a deal. And some may say, well, SSM, you're a man. It doesn't make a difference to you. No, I think, guarantee, if I was a woman, I wouldn't get worked over something stupid like that too. Almost all the women I spoke to had experiences like this, but varied on whether they found it bothersome or not. One told me that she couldn't tell a guy was joking because that's not the kind of thing you'd say if you were serious. See what I'm talking about? Making mountains out of molehills, creating drama. Got to have these feminist guys, and if God forbid a guy jokes around about something, and this guy was joking around, well, you got to make a mountain of molehill and be the bad guy. This is why these gals have a hard time in the dating world. And this is why so many guys are just like, I'm not going to deal with this crap. Forget it. I'm going to work on me. Sadie and Daya, who both go to Vanderbilt University, note that queerness and particularly bisexuality still come with a knee-jerk bro reaction. She's quoted as saying, a guy might say, "That's hot." Daya, 22, adds, "I think since we talk about queerness, it's like I could ask you anything. But that's not how it works." This guy was like, "Oh, so you're bi. Have you ever had a three-way?" When you're trying to use that as flirting method, I'm like, this person is canceled. Of course she said canceled. Today's world, guys. Notice all the buzzwords here. If you guys start doing drinking during certain buzzwords here, like patriarchy or canceled or other things like that, you guys will be drunk by the end of this video. And being a person of color, she says, dating is a whole nother ball game. And it's always about something I feel I'm conscious of when I'm even just hooking up. Part of me is like, so what are your benefits, what are your beliefs on the issue? If you're hooking up with someone who is white and in Greek life, it is seen like, what are you going to do that to yourself? Or why are you going to do that to yourself? Under hookups and deal breakers, says maybe there's a decline in sex among young people, but the women I spoke to didn't mention it. To the contrary, they're interested in exploring their own sexuality as a means of empowerment. Another buzzword, do a shot. At least up to a point. Maddie says, I'm a junior now, and all the sophomore year, I was hooking up with a lot of boys. It felt very good. Carousel. You see, now it's all about empowerment, not actually, because I got to feel empowered, I got to go do that left and right. I felt like I'm capable of casual you-know-what. I'm not this being that needs to cling on to men, but there's a buffet of side questions that confuse the matter. Like, do you tell the guy you're hooking up with other people? Are people judging you for it? Do you care? How sex positive are we? Anyway, I shouldn't have told the guy I was seeing that I was hooking up with someone else, says Maddie. We were monogamous, and I wanted it to be something more, but he was scared of commitment. He painted it like I was clinging on him, and I was like, I've been hooking up with someone else the whole time. Welcome to today's world, the hookup culture. Nobody can have relationships anymore because nobody's capable of them, but it's the carousel riding culture. So even the feminists are going to do the carousel ride. Not so much because they maybe like the men, but because they got to feel empowered to do so. But I can't imagine, I don't care how hot the girl is, how beautiful her face is, how great her body is. If she's a raving feminist, that kills all attraction. We don't want to touch that. Daya tells me that hookups, rather than dating and serious relationships, tend to be the norm. No surprise there. And despite Liza's feeling that it's more acceptable that both men and women are sexual beings, there's still double standard at play. I knew that was coming. Daya says, I think we'd all like to think that things are very sex positive, and when we're talking to our friends, it's like, what do you want? We support you. Be safe. But you've seen people talk judgmentally about how many S-word partners others have. I just don't feel like we need to be having this discussion about someone else's life, she says. The list of deal breakers I hear are long and skew toward the political, but not the obvious, Nora says. I would not date someone who's like, I'm not an feminist. I don't need people like that. There you go. Amelia had a hard no to Trump voters policy. Well, there's a surprise. For Maddie, the red flags are political things when they're really conservative or when they talk badly about their exes. So if a guy doesn't line up with you politically, but he's respectful about it, he's the bad guy. That shows how open-minded some of these gals are. And I'm being sarcastic here. Overbearing big personalities. I had a boy mansplain libertarianism on a first date. Lack of respect is a big one, especially physically. I went on a date with another guy for the first time, and at the end I went in for a hug, but he tried to go in for a kiss. Because that's what people typically would do back before this day and age. End of the date, the guy would go in for the kiss. If she wasn't interested, okay, obviously he's not interested. The guy should do darn well don't even bother at that point. But he went for the kiss, and now he's the bad guy. See? All the women praise the consent awareness programs and S-word health and alcohol safety courses at their colleges. Some people are like, what a chore, but it keeps you on the radar, says Liza. Indeed, consent seems to be more a part of a standard courtship than ever. I'm more surprised when guys don't ask, can I kiss you, than when they do, says Amelia. This is ridiculous, okay? Again, why so many guys are walking away. In my day, and guess what, and in the dating world of people that are not in their teens and 20s, or say early 30s, they're attracted to a woman at the end of a date, if you will. They're going to go in for the kiss. They're not going to ask permission to kiss her. Okay? Because that shows insecurity. It's going to turn a woman off. Okay, but in this world, you have to ask permission pretty much to do anything. Can I shake your hand? Can I hug you? Can I give you this coffee? Can I hand you this? Let's see here. A guy used to decide you were ready to make out with them, and now they're ready to use their words. It could be very impolite, but they're still asking. On a recent date, talk even turned into S-word assault, something she says about 40% of her college peers have experienced. We didn't have you-know-what, we just met. I was like, we're not going to do that, and he said something like, no consent, no problem. Well, I certainly don't want anybody going through any kind of S-word assault or anything like that. Let me make that abundantly clear. But I think the expectations of a guy asking permission to kiss you is just ridiculous. I don't think any feminine, and I didn't say feminist, I said feminine girl who doesn't subscribe to this crap would want a guy to actually ask your permission. I guarantee most women that weren't feminists would be turned off if a guy asked permission to kiss her, unless she was really into the guy, and even though that may come across as insecurity, would let that go. Conversations I never would have been able to have as a high school student out of sheer anxiety or the inability to find the right words are happening regularly, and that's a good thing. With Maddie's ex, she says, I remember we talked about what consent means and how important, and making it very clear as we started to have a more physical relationship. He very much listened. I'm open up about previous issues of consent I'd had with boys. I'm used to the not all men conversation happening or guys getting defensive. This boy wasn't like that, and he was handsome and smart, but also I felt so safe. Talk and action remain two different things, however. A lot of my guy friends are like, yes, I'm an feminist, but I think when it comes to your at a party and you're drinking and the stuff is starting to happen, there's no sense in let's communicate, says Daya. It can get messy real fast. In regards to splitting the bill and other old school norms, of course they're going to get to the old dates and splitting bills and all that. The more I talk to these young women, the more I realize how truly ingrained these hyper-traditional ways of thinking about romance are. Regardless of how much we expose feminism, there's still creepy background ideology defining a guy as the pursuer who asks and calls and pays. The woman must be chased and convinced to have you-know-what, often through the guy's persistence. We may know it's wrong and dated, and it's certainly changing, but it dies hard, particularly when you're young and getting your dates cues from the media. So, guys asking a girl out's a bad thing, in their view, and pursuing them. And there's pursuing, and then there's pursuing, and there's over-pursuing. Let me make that distinction there. The kids at Daya's Omaha, Nebraska high school definitely followed the standard heteronormative rules of dating. This is how you ask someone out. You have your first kiss or whatever on whatever number date. It was whatever you see on TV, she says. Meanwhile, she was just getting into the idea of intersectional feminism. But I don't remember it playing out in the interactions in real life. Notice how she talked about the author here about getting your cues and how to behave from TV. What I tell you, how many times have I told you people get their ideas from movies and TV and how to behave? Says, I was really conscious of being seen as someone who was overbearing or constantly talking about feelings or going after this guy. This dichotomy between what you intellectually believe and what plays out in practice. In the mix of hormones and the newness of sex and romance, it's echoed again and again in various ways. Amelia says it is a really old school norm to have men pay for dates, and I'm happy to have a free drink because I'm a person. Of course she's happy to have a free drink and free food. That's never going to change. I don't care. It's funny, but it's all about equality and all that until it comes time to pay the dinner bill or shovel some snow. Then even the most hardcore feminists are more than happy to have the guy step up and shovel the snow and pay the bill. Now, I'm joking, of course, because a lot of feminists will get pissed off if a guy, God forbid, wants to pay for the bill. But I almost always split on the first date. It's hard to do that, especially when it's a bad date. Her last date was the first to respond to her request to split by saying, "Of course, this is not a transaction," she says, "and we hooked up, so it worked for him." I ask if she's heard from her date yet, and if she would reach out to him. She says, and I quote, "I expected him to text me first," and he did. She expects him to text her first. Okay, so instead of doing what feels naturally, if she likes this dude, she is going to adhere to these rules and have to be the way that, oh no matter how much I like him, he has to contact me, okay? Instead of just doing what's natural. And there's books out there like the book The Rules, which teach women to do these things to manipulate the situation to have guys chasing after them, pursuing them. If you ever read the book or just know the book The Rules, you know what I'm talking about here. And yet, men are the bad guys when we actually write books or have channels talk about things dealing with women, but it's okay for them to have books on how to manipulate guys and all that, right? Which the book The Rules most certainly is. It says here, "Now I wait to see if he texts me and we all agreed. I act chill even though I'm not." Valenti points out that young men are taught about chivalry, but it's often coached in the idea they will do it to get things in return, as opposed to the expectation that we're all very nice to each other and we'll all work out in the end. Yeah, well, as many girls say, chivalry is dead, and guess who killed it? The feminist. Okay, now, chivalry really has nothing to do with what is thought. Right now, chivalry is thought to be basically being a gentleman and all that, which in reality has nothing to do with what it really was, as many of you know, but you want a gentleman, act like a lady. She says, when I was younger, I was like, I'm so condescending. Now I'm like, everything sucks for us. Maybe you should pay for my meal and everything else. What happens next? There's a consensus among those I spoke with that men need to get on board in order for feminism to move forward, and that feminism truly needs to be intersectional, Sadie says. Women can protest and fight all we want, and that will do some good, but men are still in positions of power. They need to start promoting women, not speaking up and taking credit for our ideas. A lot of the fourth wave has to be men starting to be compassionate listeners, listening to the struggles of others. Look, here's the deal. There are plenty of guys out there that have been compassionate, and otherwise you wouldn't be where you are today in the state of things, okay? And a lot of these guys probably regret some of that listening and being compassionate. There's the compassion and being fair to a point, but things have the pendulum has gone way too far, and we all know it. And this is what we have today all over the world. And believe me, it's far worse what I've read and heard about in other countries than it is here in the States. And some parts of the world are starting to crack down on this. I'm not going to mention a certain country or men you guys know about, that their men is becoming too feminized, so the government is literally taking action to make sure their men stop being feminized. And I'm sure you all know what country I'm talking about here, because God forbid I mention that country here, that YouTube's not going to like it, no joke, because that country they want to do a lot of business with. Amelia agrees. To me, fourth wave feminism is less feminism and more equal rights and girls getting shit done and men letting women in. Men need to step the fuck up or there's no hope. Ooh, now she's getting serious, using the F word here. We can't do it alone. We've tried a bunch of times. But young women aren't just around waiting for guys to do something. Matthew's High School Feminist Club is drafting a proposal that they'll take to the principal to address concerns about the dress code. Says here, these girls had the same concerns we had when we were young, she explains. For instance, hallway harassment. At the last meeting, some of them were talking about how in the middle school there was the Titty Twist Tuesday. This is her words, not mine. Or something super gross. And I told them that reminded me of Flip Up Fridays, when guys would try to flip up your skirt. Their faces fell as they realized this had been going on forever. They were furious. Why hasn't this been fixed yet? Well, I agree, that's not cool. Okay? Guys gotta keep their hands to themselves. No twisting, no flipping up skirts. That's not cool. Believe me, if I was a parent and I had a daughter, I'd want to whip those guys' asses. So I'm reasonable, I'm fair, that's not cool. But then there's other things they want to raise hell about. They're just absurd. When I was in high school, yeah, we wrote angry poems, we made art. We would march, but it's different. Now there's a sense of, uh-oh, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I think we've come a long way, says Nora, the one writing this. But Zoe isn't so sure. I think we need a revolution, she says. Uh-oh. I was scared about the future of the country before, but now I really am. Oh, for goodness sake. You know, it's interesting. They're scared for the future, for what the feminists think things are doomed and all that. And there's the rest of us that know a time before this nonsense was mainstream, and we're worried for the future. So, but anyhow, guys, I thought it was a good one to cover just to show you the mindset, this woman here writing this article, interviewing all these young women, 19 and 25, and what they're talking about, how things are today. Because, like I said in the beginning, I thank God I'm not in my teens or 20s now with how things are. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. It's gone too far. This is why I talk about this stuff. You know, and again, is it no surprise, for many reasons, young guys are saying, that's it, I'm not interested, because why would they want to be? You got a bunch of girls walking around acting like men and having these attitudes, and pretty much you got to ask permission to breathe, or you're pretty much breaking a law in their view. So young guys are just like, the hell with this. I'm gonna hang out with my bros. I'm gonna go rock climbing and biking and all these other things I enjoy, and save money and work, and video games even though I don't think guys spend too much time playing video games, but you know my point. Anyhow, guys, that would be find that interesting, a little take on how things are today. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.